I want to tell you something that happened to me on a December evening, many years ago, that changed everything I understood about manifestation, timing, and the invisible power that shapes our lives. And I'm sharing it now because what I discovered that night holds a secret about Christmas Eve that most people will never know, a secret that could change your entire life if you understand it before December 24th arrives. I was sitting alone in my small apartment in New York City. The radiator was clanking, snow was falling outside my window, and I was broke. Not just a little short on money, but truly, desperately broke. I had 27 cents to my name, 27 cents, and Christmas was 3 days away. I remember looking at those coins in my palm and feeling something I'd never quite felt before. It wasn't just fear or worry. It was a kind of spiritual emergency. Because you see, I'd been teaching about prosperity consciousness. I'd been telling people that their words had power, that their thoughts created their reality, that the universe was abundant and responsive. And there I sat, with 27 cents, wondering if I'd been fooling myself all along. But something happened that night. Something that would later become the foundation of everything I would teach about manifestation and perfect timing. I was about to discover that Christmas Eve holds a frequency, a spiritual doorway, that appears only once a year. And what you do with that doorway, what you understand about it, determines whether the coming year unfolds in struggle or in grace. Most people think manifestation is about working harder on your visualizations, affirming more intensely, or holding your desire more tightly. But that night, I learned something entirely different. I learned about surrender timing, about divine appointments, about how the universe has certain moments when the veil between the invisible and the visible becomes so thin that what normally takes months can happen in moments. And Christmas Eve is one of those moments. Not because of the holiday itself, but because of what's happening in the collective consciousness of humanity. For just a few hours, millions of people simultaneously open their hearts. They think about giving, they remember love, they become tender, they hope for miracles. And that collective opening creates a tidal wave of spiritual energy that you can ride if you know how. But here's what you must understand, and this is critical. Most people completely miss this wave because they're doing manifestation backwards. They're trying to use Christmas Eve to get something, to manipulate the universe into giving them what they want. And the universe doesn't respond to manipulation. It never has. It never will. The universe responds to alignment, to surrender, to a very specific kind of spiritual posture that I'm going to teach you today. Because that night, with my 27 cents, I finally stopped trying to make things happen. I stopped affirming and visualizing and trying to convince the universe that I deserved prosperity. Instead, I did something that felt completely counterintuitive. I surrendered, but not in defeat. I surrendered into something, into a knowing, into a trust so complete that it required no evidence. And what happened in the 72 hours that followed taught me the real secret of manifestation. The secret that has nothing to do with effort and everything to do with becoming a clear channel for what already wants to come through you. So if you're watching this, and something in you is hungry for a breakthrough, if you're tired of trying so hard and getting nowhere, if you've been waiting for your life to finally shift into the abundance and joy and love you know is possible, then what I'm about to share with you could be the missing piece. Not because I'm going to give you a new technique, but because I'm going to help you understand how divine timing actually works, and why Christmas Eve represents one of the most powerful manifestation portals of the entire year. But you have to understand it correctly. You have to approach it with clean hands and a pure heart, as the ancient texts say. You have to stop trying to use spiritual laws to get what you want, and instead learn how to become what you seek. That's the real secret. Not attraction, but embodiment. Not receiving, but becoming. And Christmas Eve offers you a very specific opportunity to make that shift in a way that can alter the trajectory of your entire coming year. Now, before I tell you what happened in those 72 hours after my 27-cent moment, and before I share the exact practice you need to do before December 24th, I need to give you some context. I need to help you understand what's really happening beneath the surface of your life right now, and why most of what you've been taught about manifestation has kept you stuck in a cycle of temporary results and ultimate disappointment. You see, there are two ways to approach manifestation. The first way is what I call the demanding consciousness. This is when you come to the universe with a list of requirements. You want the money, the relationship, the health, the recognition. You've decided what you need to be happy, and you're using spiritual techniques to try to make the universe comply with your plan. You're affirming, visualizing, scripting, asking, demanding, and sometimes it even works. Sometimes you get what you asked for. But have you noticed that even when you get it, something still feels empty? Something still feels like it's missing? That's because demanding consciousness, no matter how positive or spiritual it sounds, is still rooted in separation. It's still rooted in the belief that you are here, and your good is somewhere out there, and you have to find a way to drag it across the distance and make it yours. This approach exhausts people. I see it everywhere. People are so tired from trying to manifest. They're tired of the vision boards that don't work, tired of the affirmations that feel hollow, tired of the disappointment when December 31st arrives, and they're still stuck in the same life they were trying to escape 12 months earlier, and they blame themselves. They think they didn't believe hard enough, visualize clearly enough, raise their vibration high enough. But that's not the problem. The problem is the entire paradigm. The problem is that demanding consciousness will only ever give you temporary results because it's building on a foundation of lack. The second way to approach manifestation is what I call the allowing consciousness. And this is what I stumbled into that night with my 27 cents. Allowing consciousness doesn't come to the universe with demands. It comes with availability. It doesn't say, I need this specific thing by this specific date. It says, I am ready to receive what is mine by divine right. I am open to good that exceeds anything I could imagine or plan. I am available to be used by the universe for purposes greater than my small self can conceive. And here's the miracle. When you shift from demanding to allowing, from grasping to receiving, from planning to trusting, everything changes. Not because you're doing a better technique, but because you've changed your fundamental relationship with life itself. Most people have no idea how to make this shift. They've been so conditioned to believe that they have to make things happen, that they have to force and push and strive, that the idea of allowing feels passive. It feels like giving up. But allowing is not passive. Allowing is the most active thing you can do because it requires you to continuously release fear, release control, release your attachment to specific outcomes, and stay open in the face of uncertainty. That takes tremendous spiritual strength. That takes practice. That takes a kind of courage that our culture doesn't even recognize as courage because it looks like stillness on the outside. And this is where Christmas Eve comes in. Because Christmas Eve is practice. It's a moment when the universe gives you the perfect conditions to shift from demanding consciousness to allowing consciousness. It's a moment when the collective energy is so oriented toward love and giving and miracles that you can ride that wave right into a new state of being. But only if you know what you're doing. Only if you understand the real mechanism at play. Let me tell you what happened after that night. After my moment of surrender with 27 cents in my hand, it was December 21st. Christmas Eve was 3 days away. I had no plan. No strategy. No idea how I was going to pay my rent or buy food. But something had shifted in me. I had stopped fighting. I had stopped trying to figure it out. I had simply said to the universe, to God, to whatever intelligence runs this mysterious existence, I am yours. Use me. Provide for me. Show me what I cannot see. And then I went to bed. The next morning, December 22nd, I received a letter in the mail. It was from a woman I'd met briefly at a lecture 6 months earlier. I barely remembered her, but she had remembered me. And she wrote to say that something I'd said that evening had changed her life. She'd been suicidal. My words had given her hope. She'd rebuilt her entire existence. And now, 6 months later, she felt moved to send me a gift. In the envelope was a check for $500. $500. In that era, in my circumstances, it was a fortune. But it wasn't the money that shocked me. It was the timing. It was the fact that this woman had felt moved to write that letter and send that check at the exact moment I needed it, even though she had no way of knowing my situation. That's when I began to understand something about how the universe actually works. It's not that the universe responds to your demands. It's that the universe is always orchestrating synchronicities, always arranging divine appointments, always trying to deliver your good to you. But it can only deliver to you what you're ready to receive. And most of us are not ready to receive because we're too busy demanding, controlling, planning, forcing. We're so locked into our own agenda that we can't see the gifts that are trying to reach us from unexpected directions. The $500 was just the beginning. On December 23rd, I received a phone call from a publisher who wanted to discuss a book. On Christmas Eve itself, I had a conversation with someone who would become one of the most important teachers in my life. And on Christmas Day, I woke up knowing, with absolute certainty, that I would never again doubt the universe's ability to provide for me. Not because I'd gotten what I wanted, but because I'd witnessed how the invisible becomes visible when you stop blocking it with your fear and control. That Christmas taught me the secret I'm going to share with you today. It taught me that there are certain moments in time when the universe is especially ready to deliver your good, and Christmas Eve is one of those moments. But you cannot approach it with demanding consciousness. You cannot come with your wish list and your expectations. You must come empty, available, surrendered. And from that emptiness, from that availability, miracles flow. Now, I know some of you are thinking, that's easy to say, but I have real problems, real bills, real situations that need real solutions. I understand. I've been there. But what I'm trying to help you see is that your real problems cannot be solved from the level of consciousness that created them. Your demanding, controlling, fearful consciousness is what's keeping your problems in place. And no amount of effort from that consciousness will set you free. You need a shift. A fundamental reorientation of your relationship with life. And Christmas Eve offers you the perfect opportunity to make that shift. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to walk you through exactly what's happening beneath the surface of your life right now. I'm going to tell you why your manifestations haven't been working the way you hoped. I'm going to share stories that will help you see the patterns in your own experience. And then, I'm going to give you a very specific practice to do before, on, and after December 24th that will align you with the allowing consciousness I've been describing. Not a technique to get what you want, but a practice to become available to what's trying to reach you. But first, you need to understand something about divine appointments and spiritual timing. Because without this understanding, you'll misuse the power of Christmas Eve and end up disappointed. Again, there's a reason your life looks the way it looks right now. Not because you deserve it, or because you're being punished, or because you did something wrong, but because your current reality is a perfect reflection of your current consciousness. Everything you see in your external world, your bank account, your relationships, your health, your opportunities, all of it is a mirror showing you the state of your inner world. This is not a punishment. This is information. This is feedback. This is the universe helping you see where you're blocked, where you're afraid, where you're still trying to control instead of allow. Most people don't want to hear this. They want to believe that their problems are external, that they just need more money, or a better partner, or a different job. But I'm here to tell you the truth. Even if it's uncomfortable, your external circumstances will not change until your internal consciousness changes. You can win the lottery tomorrow and still be broke within a year if your prosperity consciousness hasn't shifted. You can meet the perfect partner and still end up lonely if your love consciousness hasn't healed. The external is always following the internal. Always. No exceptions. This is actually good news, even though it doesn't feel like it at first, because it means you have power. Real power. Not the power to manipulate circumstances, but the power to shift your consciousness. And when your consciousness shifts, your entire world reorganizes itself to match your new state of being. This is the law. This is how it works. This is what I've witnessed in my own life and in the lives of countless others who've dared to test these principles. I remember a woman who came to me absolutely desperate. Her husband had left her for another woman, and she was absolutely consumed with bitterness and the desire for revenge. She wanted to see him suffer. She wanted the other woman to fail. She rehearsed imaginary conversations where she told them both exactly what she thought of them. And do you know what happened? She became ill. Her body began to break down under the weight of all that poison she was carrying. I said to her, "You must bless them. You must release them completely. Every time you think of them, you must say, 'I release you to your highest good. I bless you and set you free.' She looked at me like I had lost my mind. "Bless them," she said, "after what they've done to me. Never. But desperation is a powerful teacher. When you've exhausted every other option, when hatred has brought you nothing but sleepless nights and a body that's turning against you, you become willing to try something different." So she began, reluctantly at first, to speak these words of release. Not because she felt them, oh no. She didn't feel them at all in the beginning. But she spoke them anyway, mechanically, like a child reciting lessons. And then something miraculous happened. After several weeks of this practice, something in her shifted. The knot in her chest began to loosen. She could breathe again. She could sleep. And within a few months, an opportunity came to her. A position in another city, a fresh start, new friends, a life she actually wanted rather than the prison she'd been living in. The husband? She stopped caring. He became irrelevant to her happiness. That's true freedom. You see, when you hold on to resentment, when you refuse to forgive, you're not punishing the other person. You're punishing yourself. You're the one drinking the poison and expecting someone else to die. The universe doesn't work that way. What you give out, you get back. What you hold in your heart creates your reality. I've seen people transform their entire financial situation the moment they stopped hoarding and started flowing. There was a woman I knew who was barely scraping by. She counted every penny with fear, clutched her small savings like a drowning person clutches a life raft, and the tighter she held on, the less she had. One day I told her, "You're damming up the stream. Let it flow." She looked at me like I'd lost my mind. But something in her shifted. She decided to give not from her abundance, because she didn't have any, but from her faith. She bought groceries for a neighbor who had even less. She slipped a few dollars into the collection plate when everything in her screamed to hold back. And do you know what happened? Within 2 weeks, she received an unexpected check from an old insurance claim she'd forgotten about. A month later, she was offered a better-paying position. The floodgates opened because she opened first. This isn't magic. This is law. The law of circulation. Your money is energy. Your love is energy. Your time, your talents, your very presence, all energy. And energy must move. When you try to bottle it up, seal it tight, keep it all for yourself, it stagnates. It becomes toxic. But when you let it flow through you, from the universe through you and back out into the world, you become a channel of infinite supply. The key is motive. You cannot give in order to get. The universe reads your heart, not your actions. If you're giving with one hand, while mentally calculating what you'll receive with the other, you've already blocked the flow. That's manipulation, not circulation. That's bargaining, not faith. Give because it brings you joy. Give because you recognize abundance all around you. Give because you trust that there is always enough for you, for me, for everyone. That trust is what opens the channels. And here's something crucial. You must give with love, with gladness, with a sense of privilege. If you give resentfully, grudgingly, from a sense of obligation or guilt, you're poisoning the stream. You might as well not give at all. The universe responds to the feeling behind the action, always. I've watched people give spectacular donations with great fanfare, and I've watched those same people wonder why their own supply seemed to dry up afterward. The reason? They gave for recognition. They gave to be seen. They gave to control how they were perceived. And the universe, which reads the heart like you and I read a newspaper, simply could not reward that vibration. Contrast this with a woman I knew who could barely afford her rent, yet she always kept coins in her pocket for anyone who asked. She never announced it. She never kept score. When you complimented her generosity, she'd look genuinely confused, as though giving were as natural as breathing. Her supply? It never ran out. Money came to her through the strangest channels, a forgotten bank account, an unexpected inheritance from a distant relative, clients appearing out of nowhere. She lived in the flow because she gave from the flow. This is what I mean when I say giving must be joyful. It must feel like release, not loss. Like planting, not depleting. When you give and feel lighter, freer, more spacious, that's the signal you've given correctly. When you give and feel resentful, diminished, or anxious about your own security, you've missed the mark entirely. Here's a practice I recommend. Before you give anything money, time, energy, attention, pause, and check your inner weather. What does it feel like? Is there joy there? Willingness? Or is there a clenched fist somewhere inside you, a small voice keeping ledgers and accounts? If you sense resistance, don't override it with willpower. Stop. Bless the person or cause, but wait until your heart has shifted. Giving from obligation builds debt in your consciousness, not credit. And let's address something many spiritual teachers ignore. You are not required to give to everyone who asks. This shocks people. They believe that spiritual law demands they say yes to every outstretched hand, every charity letter, every friend in need. Nonsense. Your intuition will always guide you toward right giving. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is say no, because your no protects both your energy and their opportunity to find their true source. I knew a man who gave to every single request, terrified that refusal would block his good. He gave when his spirit said no. He gave when he felt manipulated. He gave to prove he was generous. Within 2 years, he was bankrupt and bitter, blaming the universe for betraying him. But the universe hadn't betrayed him, he had betrayed himself by ignoring his inner guidance. His story taught me something crucial. The inner voice isn't always convenient. It doesn't always tell us what we want to hear. Sometimes it whispers caution when we want confirmation. Sometimes it urges us forward when we want to stay safe. And that's precisely why so many people choose to ignore it. But here's what I've observed time and time again. Ignoring your inner voice doesn't silence it. It simply forces it to speak through circumstances instead. That nagging feeling you dismissed becomes the opportunity that passes you by. That quiet warning you overrode becomes the lesson you learn the hard way. The universe is remarkably persistent in its attempts to guide us. I remember a woman who came to me in tears. She had married a man despite every fiber of her being screaming no at the altar. "I thought I was just nervous," she told me. "I thought it was normal wedding jitters. Everyone said he was perfect for me, successful, handsome, from the right family. How could I trust some feeling over all that evidence?" But that feeling, as she discovered within months, was her inner wisdom recognizing what her conscious mind refused to see. The perfection was performance. The success was built on deception. Everything her logical mind had cataloged as assets, her inner voice had recognized as red flags in disguise. "I knew," she whispered to me. "On some level, I absolutely knew, and I married him anyway." This is the tragedy of living disconnected from divine guidance. We don't just make wrong choices, we make them while knowing, deep down, that they're wrong. And that knowledge, that betrayal of our own inner wisdom, creates a wound that runs far deeper than any external consequence. The good news? Your inner voice never abandons you. Even after years of being ignored, dismissed, or overridden, it remains faithful, waiting, ready to guide you the moment you're willing to listen. I've seen people reconnect with their intuition after decades of ignoring it. The voice is always there, though sometimes it's been buried under so many layers of doubt, fear, and external programming that we've forgotten how to hear it. Think of intuition like a radio frequency that's always broadcasting. The signal never stops, never weakens, never abandons you. But if your receiver is clogged with static from worry, from overthinking, from the constant noise of other people's opinions and expectations, you won't be able to tune in clearly. That's what happened to most of us. We didn't lose the signal, we just stopped knowing how to listen. Children are naturally intuitive because they haven't learned to question that inner voice yet. A child will tell you, "I don't like that person," without any logical reason, and they're usually right. They feel energy. They trust their gut without needing evidence or justification. But then we grow up, and we're taught that feelings aren't facts, that logic trumps instinct, that we need proof before we can trust ourselves. And slowly, gradually, that beautiful natural receiver gets buried. Here's what I know for certain. You cannot think your way to intuitive knowing. You feel your way there. Intuition doesn't live in your head. It lives in your body, in that sudden knowing in your gut, in the hair standing up on the back of your neck, in the warmth you feel around certain people and the cold contraction around others. Your body is constantly giving you information, but we've been trained to override it with mental justifications. How many times have you met someone and immediately felt uncomfortable, but you told yourself you were being judgmental? How many times have you felt pulled toward a certain decision, but you talked yourself out of it because it didn't make logical sense? That's the moment where we abandon ourselves. That's where we choose external validation over internal wisdom. Reconnecting with your intuition requires something modern culture tells us is weakness. Stillness. You cannot hear that quiet voice while you're running at full speed through your life, filling every moment with noise, distraction, and busyness. The voice of intuition is subtle. It doesn't shout. It doesn't compete. It simply offers itself. And if you're too busy to notice, it will wait. And here's what I've learned about divine timing. It doesn't operate on urgency. It operates on readiness. You see, we live in a world that worships speed. Fast results. Quick fixes. Overnight success. We've been conditioned to believe that if something takes time, we're doing it wrong. That if we can't see immediate evidence of our desire manifesting, we should panic, pivot, or push harder. But the universe doesn't rush. A seed doesn't apologize for taking its time to become a tree. The moon doesn't speed up its cycles because you're impatient for the full moon. And you're good? It's coming at precisely the speed it needs to come. I've watched people destroy their own miracles by trying to force them into existence before the foundation was ready. They'd get impatient with the invisible work, the work happening beneath the surface, in the soil of their consciousness, and they'd start digging up their seeds to check if they were growing. And what happens when you do that? You damage the roots. You interrupt the process. You set yourself back to the beginning. Divine timing asks you to trust what you cannot see, to believe in the work being done behind the scenes, in realms beyond your immediate perception. It asks you to have faith that every delay is actually divine protection, every detour is actually divine direction, and every not yet is the universe saying, I'm preparing something better than you asked for. I remember a woman who came to me heartbroken because she'd lost a job opportunity she was certain was meant for her. She'd prayed, affirmed, visualized, done everything right, and then at the last moment, the position was given to someone else. She felt betrayed by the universe. Why would God show me this door if he wasn't going to open it? She asked. I told her what I'm telling you now. Sometimes God closes a door because the building is scheduled for demolition. 3 months later, she was offered a position at another company, one that paid more, aligned better with her values, and came with opportunities the first job never could have provided. The company she'd originally wanted to work for? They went through massive layoffs 6 months later. Divine timing had protected her, but she couldn't see it until she was standing in her actual good. This is the faith we must cultivate. Not blind faith, not passive faith, but active, expectant faith that knows. What's mine is already mine, and it's making its way to me right now. And here's what most people don't understand about that faith. It doesn't require you to see the path. It only requires you to see the promise. Think of it like ordering something online. You don't need to know which warehouse it's coming from, which delivery driver will bring it, what route they'll take. You just need the confirmation number. You just need to know it's been shipped. That's spiritual faith. You have your confirmation. Your word is law. The universe has processed your order. Now you simply prepare to receive. I've watched people sabotage their own demonstrations 1,000 times by demanding to know the how. They want God to send them a detailed itinerary. They want a step-by-step blueprint before they'll believe. But that's not how the invisible becomes visible. That's not how miracles work. The how is none of your business. Your business is the what and the when is always now, in consciousness. A woman once came to me in absolute desperation. She needed $5,000 within a week, or she'd lose her home. $5,000. She had no job, no savings, no obvious source. I said to her, "Your word is law. Speak it now." She looked at me like I'd lost my mind. "But how?" she kept asking. "Where will it come from? Who will give it to me?" And I said, "That's God's problem, not yours. Your job is to claim it and believe it. God's job is to deliver it." She finally agreed. We spoke the word together. Infinite Spirit, open the way for the immediate manifestation of $5,000. It comes to me under grace in perfect ways. 3 days later, a relative she hadn't spoken to in years called her out of the blue. An inheritance she didn't even know existed. $7,000. Now listen, could I have predicted that would be the channel? Absolutely not. Could she have made that happen through her own scheming? Never in a million years. That's the point. The universe has access to infinite channels you know nothing about. Your limited human mind can only see 3 or 4 possible solutions. God sees 3 million. When you insist on knowing the how, you're actually blocking the flow. You're telling the universe, only bring it to me this way, through this person, by this method. And the universe says, okay, if you insist. But I had a much easier route planned. So here's what I want you to try instead. Stop planning the route. Stop white-knuckling the steering wheel of your manifestation. Instead, become ridiculously specific about the destination and gloriously vague about the journey. Tell the universe times what times you want, not times how times it should arrive. You want financial freedom? Perfect. Declare it. Feel it. But don't decide it has to come through a promotion at your current job, or through your Etsy shop finally taking off, or through some specific investment. The moment you do that, you've just eliminated 900 other pathways that were opening up for you. I've watched this play out in the most fascinating ways. A woman came to me once, desperate for money to save her home. She was convinced, absolutely convinced, that the only solution was for her estranged brother to finally pay back the loan she'd given him years ago. She spent every waking moment obsessing over this, calling him, writing him letters, imagining conversations where he apologized and handed her a check. Total stranglehold on the how. I told her, speak your word for the money. Declare that your supply is infinite and immediate, but release your brother from your mental demands. Let the universe surprise you. She was resistant at first. That money from her brother felt like justice, like the time's right, time's way for it to come. But she was desperate enough to try. Within 2 weeks, an old friend reached out about a consulting opportunity. Within a month, she had more than enough to save her home. And here's the kicker, 6 months later, her brother did pay her back. But by then, she didn't need it anymore. The universe had already handled it through a completely different channel. This is what I mean by infinite pathways. You think you see one door. The universe sees 1,000. Your job isn't to pick the lock on the one door you've decided is the door. Your job is to stand in your power, declare your word, and stay open to whichever door swings open first. Because forcing a specific outcome is like trying to force a flower to bloom at midnight in winter. You can stand there with your watering can, you can shine a flashlight on it, you can will it with every fiber of your being, but you're working against the natural rhythm of things. And when you work against the rhythm, you create resistance. When you create resistance, you block the flow. I learned this the hard way, as most of us do. I wanted a particular outcome so badly I could taste it. I had declared my word, visualized it, affirmed it morning and night. But I had also attached myself to exactly how and when it would arrive. I had written the universe's script, directed its actors, and scheduled the curtain call. And then I waited, and waited. And the door I was watching stayed firmly shut. Meanwhile, 3 other doors opened that I completely ignored, because they weren't my door. They didn't look like what I had imagined. So I let them close while I kept knocking on the one that wouldn't budge. It wasn't until I finally exhausted myself, until I released my white-knuckled grip on that one specific outcome, that I noticed what was actually happening around me. The universe had been answering me all along, just not in the language I was demanding it speak. This is what my way or the way means. You hold your vision, yes. You speak your word with authority, absolutely. But then, you must, and I cannot emphasize this enough, you must allow the infinite intelligence to deliver it through the path of least resistance, not the path you've decided is correct, not the timeline you've deemed acceptable, but the path that actually works. The universe is not your assistant, it's your partner, and partners collaborate. You bring the desire, the faith, the expectancy. The universe brings the how, the when, the through whom. Your job is to stay so anchored in the knowing that you don't collapse into panic when things unfold differently than you pictured. That's the secret nobody tells you about manifestation. It's not about controlling outcomes. It's about controlling your inner atmosphere while the universe rearranges the furniture of your life. I once knew a woman who wanted desperately to be married. She'd been alone for years, and every birthday felt like a referendum on her worth. She prayed, she visualized, she did everything the books told her to do, and then one day, she stopped asking for a husband. Instead, she asked for this. Let me become the woman who is ready for her perfect union. See the difference? She stopped trying to drag the future into her present. She started preparing her consciousness for what she said she wanted. She took a pottery class. She learned to cook elaborate meals just for herself. She bought beautiful sheets and fresh flowers for her own bedroom. She stopped treating her life like a waiting room and started treating it like the main event. 6 months later, she met her husband. But here's what she told me. Florence, by the time he showed up, I was so content that I almost didn't notice. That's not indifference. That's readiness. That's a consciousness that has already claimed its good. The universe doesn't respond to begging, it responds to assumption. When you assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled, when you inhabit that version of yourself internally, you become a magnet for its physical equivalent. You stop chasing. You start attracting. But let me be clear about something. This isn't about pretending. This isn't about fake it till you make it affirmations that you don't believe. That's just noise. I'm talking about a genuine shift in your inner conviction. I'm talking about the moment when you stop hoping it might happen and start knowing it must happen because you've aligned yourself with the law. And here's where people get tripped up. They think that knowing means having all the answers. It doesn't. Knowing means trusting the process even when you can't see the path. It means understanding that closed doors aren't rejections, they're redirections. This knowing I'm describing isn't passive. It's not about sitting back and waiting for life to happen to you. It's active faith combined with inspired action. It's saying yes to opportunities that align with your vision, even when they seem small or insignificant. It's about recognizing that every step forward, no matter how tiny, is still movement in the right direction. I've watched people sabotage themselves because they were waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect circumstances, the perfect feeling of readiness. But here's what I know to be true. The universe doesn't reward perfection. It rewards commitment. It rewards those who are willing to take messy action, who are willing to stumble forward even when their knees are shaking. Think about planting a seed. You don't dig it up every day to check if it's growing. You don't stand over it with anxiety, demanding it sprout according to your timeline. You water it. You give it sunlight. You trust that beneath the surface, in the darkness of the soil, something miraculous is happening. The same principle applies to your dreams, your goals, your desires. There's an invisible process unfolding, and your job is to maintain the conditions for growth, not to control every aspect of the outcome. This is where so many people lose their way. They confuse control with power. They think that knowing every detail, managing every variable, and eliminating every risk is what will bring them success. But that's the ego talking. That's fear dressed up as strategy. Real power comes from knowing your worth, declaring your intention, and then allowing the universe to orchestrate the details in ways that are far more elegant and effective than you could have planned. I want you to understand something crucial. Your lack of knowledge about the how is not a weakness. It's actually your strength. When you don't know how something will happen, you can't limit it with your imagination. You can't box it in with your past experiences or your current understanding. You leave room for miracles. You leave room for opportunities you never could have conceived on your own. The universe is infinitely creative. It has resources you've never heard of. It has connections you don't know exist. It has timing that's more perfect than anything you could orchestrate. But it can only work its magic when you step back from trying to figure it all out and instead step forward in faith. And this is where most people stumble. They want the outcome, but they won't release the how. They pray for the thing, but they hold on tight to their own limited ideas of how it must arrive. They say, yes, universe, I'm ready, but then they add a footnote, only if it comes through this person, at this time, in this exact way. That's not faith. That's control, dressed up in spiritual language. Real faith says, I know what I want. I've claimed it. I've spoken it. And now I trust the invisible intelligence that orchestrates galaxies to handle the details of my little life. You see, your job isn't to be the architect and the builder and the inspector. Your job is to hold the vision and follow the intuitive hits. Your job is to stay open. Your job is to notice when a door cracks open and to walk through it, even when it doesn't look like the door you were expecting. I've watched people turn down the perfect opportunity because it didn't match the picture in their head. I've seen someone reject the ideal relationship because the person showed up in jeans instead of a suit. I've seen artists refuse the big break because it came through a channel they deemed beneath them. And then, they wonder why their prayers go unanswered.